Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a bit of a rambling, life updatey sort of video. Lots of stuff going on. I want to talk about what's been happening in my life and in the business. So there'll be like 4 or 5 things. What's happening moving forward. So that'll be like 5 or 6 things. And then a bunch of different challenges that I'm going through personally and like we're going through as a business. And that'll be like 15 things. And this is going to be a really long video that probably realistically won't be that valuable, objectively speaking. So if you want something that will add value to your life more explicitly, then please probably click off this and watch a video by, I don't know, Matt DiBello or Peter McKinnon or Thomas Frank instead. But if you're interested in finding more about my life and the business and how things are going and how things feel as if they're falling apart, then feel free to continue watching. I guess kind of main thing is that I've now moved to London. I spent 9 years in Cambridge and then moved to London about 2 months ago. And here I am now. This is where I'm going to be living for the next year. That's been a pretty big move. It's been interesting being in London because now my social calendar is a lot more full than it was in Cambridge, and a lot of my friends are here in London, and the pace of life here seems pretty strong as well. It's just that everything is quite a lot more expensive than it was back in Cambridge. And very excitingly, we also have this studio now. So if you look around me, you can see it's all kind of a bit of a mess. We got this big space. We've got a lease for a year. And when we first moved in, it was like 2 weeks ago. It was a Friday and I was here on my own. The place was pretty empty, just had the desks in it. And I really had this strong sense of buyer's remorse, thinking like, what the hell have I done? How I spent so much money on this office space? This is costing us, given that I'm all about transparency and keeping it real and stuff. It's costing us about £11,000 a month plus VAT. So VAT is 20%. So what's that? Like 13K a month, which over the course of a year is about £150,000 for this studio space here in London. That is utterly absurd when I think about it. But I'm sort of tentatively hoping, fingers crossed, that it will be ROI positive, return on investment positive, and we'll get more than £150,000 of value by virtue of having a studio space than if we didn't have a studio space and if I kept shooting at home. But to be honest, like the rationale for getting this was that while I was in Cambridge for the last few months, me and Angus, one of my team members, stationed ourselves in the local WeWork, and it was super nice having a place to commute to. Like I'd cycle to the WeWork or drive there and I'd be there all day, have lunch there, kind of have dinner afterwards and then go back home. And it was so nice not having to do work while I was at home. And my desk setup, my fancy ass desk setup, which I've talked about on this channel quite a lot, ended up just not really being used because I realized that actually I do everything on my laptop or on my phone or on my iPad. I don't really need this fancy ass screen and all that kind of stuff. But it was actually so good having an office to commute to. And I realized that, oh my God, this whole like 9 to 5 thing, maybe there is something to it rather than the whole, hey, I'm working from home, I can do whatever I want. Anyway, so when I moved to London, I knew that I wanted to get some kind of studio, and we found this kind of office space, which is so nice. There's windows on either side, there's a lot of natural light coming in, and it's just such a nice sort of inspiring vibe to hang out in. So now I've kind of made a rule for myself that no cameras at home, no filming at home. Probably gonna break that rule at some point, but this is the studio. It just makes coming to work and doing this YouTube thing, doing the business thing a lot more fun. And we now have people here in the studio in person. So Angus was here earlier today. We've got Lucas helping filming today. And the idea is that on Mondays, everyone on the team gets together and we have like a content brainstorm session with our writers and our YouTube producer and me and Angus and the rest of the team. And we've had that recently kind of over the past few days, and that's been super nice. So that's really the rationale behind getting the studio, but there was still this large amount of like buyer's remorse inside of me thinking, oh my God, this place is stupidly expensive. Speaking of stupidly expensive, we've also had a bit of a kind of hiring spree recently. So you might have seen a few months ago, I posted a video talking about how we're hiring people for the team. At the time we were hiring for like 8 positions and loads of people applied. And we're still in the process of recruiting some of the final positions. But last time I counted, which was a few minutes ago, we now have around like 18, 19 people on the team, excluding me, of which like 4 are kind of part-time, like 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 2 or 3 days a week. And the rest are full-time. I was at this YouTuber convention last week. And people were like, oh, how's the team? I was like, yeah, we've got 19 people now. You've got 19 people? What the hell do you need 19 people for? And I was like, yeah, you're right. That's a really good point. What the hell do we need 19 people for? But it's been one of those things where it's like, as the business has expanded, especially with the courses, especially with the part-time YouTuber Academy, there's just all these, as we draw out our organizational chart, which is something I'll do later in the video. As we draw out the org chart, we see that there's all these different holes of expertise within the team. And we've got people like Angus doing like 7 people's jobs. We've got people like Jakob doing 4 people's jobs. And a lot of the team was quite overstretched. And I just didn't realize this before where when you're growing and it's like, oh, I guess we'll just launch this course. I guess we'll just do that and that and that. And more stuff gets added to people's plates, where then kind of we took a step back and we realized, oh crap, we actually do need lots and lots of people to do this sort of stuff. So now we have like 4/5 people full-time just on our part-time YouTuber Academy, which is good. We have sort of 4/5 writers now who are going to be helping with brainstorming content ideas and doing research, helping with the YouTube channel, other YouTube channels that we're starting, more on that later, helping with my book, more on that later, helping with the blog and with the articles and the newsletter and social media and all this kind of stuff. And we're still in the process of hiring a videographer, and we're probably going to be looking for another editor fairly soon. So yeah, the team is expanding, and it all feels kind of scary. Like, this is one of the things that keeps me up at night, thinking that, oh my God, if we're literally spending like £1 million a year on salaries for the team. And that's fine for now because we can afford to do that as a business. But it's like, the more people we hire, the more the fixed costs of running this business go up, and the more it becomes reliant on, oh crap, now that we have all these people's salaries and mortgages to pay, the YouTube channel better be doing well, our courses better be doing well. It really kind of ramps up the pressure. Whereas when the team is small, or when it was just me, it was like, oh, I'll do what I want. This is just a side hustle. But now it's somehow turned into this actual real life business that people's livelihoods are kind of depending on, which is kind of scary. So I'm kind of like, not trying to think too hard about it, but at the same time, it does keep me up at night thinking, shit, how are we going to afford all of this stuff? Especially if, in this business, you have your sort of 15 minutes of fame and then things start to decline. And the thing I'm always worried about, especially if a video does badly, is, are we now on the road to decline? And therefore, are we going to have to let go of people? Are we going to have to cut down our costs? Are we going to have to, I don't know, do fewer things that I want to do just because we can't afford to do this kind of stuff anymore? So yeah, just really ramps up the pressure. But hey, it's kind of a nice problem to have. It is exciting while also being scary at the same time. And I guess final update before we talk about kind of what's next is that we've launched the Deep Dive podcast. This has been a thing that I wanted to do for a while, but took a while, work in progress. We kind of dabbled with it about a year ago with kind of the Deep Dive live stream interview series. I don't know why I'm using this microphone, it's not even active. But this is sort of like the podcast setup for now. We have a very kind of minimum viable studio setup. So like normally there's like a tree behind me, there's a tree behind the guest over there, there's like stuff. But what we're trying to do with the studio is turn it into like a sort of super sick place. Bookshelves, lamps, trees, plants, the whole shebang. But the podcast seems to be going well. People seem to be liking the interviews. I'll put a link to the Deep Dive podcast, link in the video description if you want to check it out. So that's been good. And we've got Amber, who's one of our team members now, who's kind of producing the podcast. And so reaching out to guests and like compiling research thingies about them and telling me, right, Ali, you've got to read this person's book by next week. And then I get the book on Audible or on Kindle, and then I listen to the book at like at whatever X speed, so that I'm prepared for the interview that I do with the person. And that's been fun. Like, it's really cool having an excuse to have a long form chat with someone who I wouldn't normally speak to. So podcast, definitely a long-term project that I'm pretty excited about. It's nice because doing a podcast kind of takes the pressure off a little bit, because my job is to ask questions, and I love asking questions and like finding out more about the person and being interested in their life story. So it feels like a sustainable way of doing the content thing. And I really admire what people like Tim Ferriss and Lex Fridman and Lewis Ho's School of Greatness have done with this format, the podcast format, where initially, like for example with Tim Ferriss, his content started off as being all about him, like the 4-Hour Workweek, 4-Hour Chef, 4-Hour Body. He's the guy who is like doing all the experiments and like doing everything himself. But then circa 2014, 2015, sort of his focus shifted to the podcast, where it's now shining the spotlight on other people. And that I think is really cool, because it adds a lot of longevity, I think, to his brand, so that he doesn't have to continuously be the front runner, the showrunner himself. He can just interview other people, He can interview other people, which adds value to the audience in a really nice way. So we're hoping to do more of that kind of stuff. So those were a few updates. I want to talk about a few things about what's kind of happening next in the business. One of the main things is that we are trying to make this studio look good. It's kind of an office space, but I like to refer to it as the studio because it sounds more cool. And if I tell myself and other people, oh yeah, I'm just going to head down to the studio, that sounds like I'm a cool guy. Whereas I'm just going down to the office, sounds like I'm a corporate slave, which is the thing I've been trying to avoid all my life. But yeah, decent natural light coming in. I'll give you a little bit of a tour of what it's like at the moment. We have a nice little kind of outdoor balcony area, which is pretty sick, where we could actually potentially film some stuff. In fact, the audio outside here is much better. There's no echo, unlike the audio in over there. But the idea is that we want to just make this place look absolutely sick for filming videos. So the idea is that this back wall over here will probably have a sofa. Over here will probably be like a bookshelf, lamp, plant, loads of plants, loads of greenery. And I really want to go for a sort of light, airy, pastel colored vibe. If you remember, if you watched the channel for a few months, in my place in Cambridge, I had those 3 posters of like London, South Africa, and Tokyo with the sort of like light pastel colors. And I really like that kind of vibe, but I also want loads of like greenery here. So maybe, you know, those Pickup Limes. Pickup Limes, amazing YouTube channel. Sadia in her studio has like those plants that like leafy plants that go down. That looks really cool. I'd love to do something like that with the space. And so the idea would be that we'd be able to film videos in here, and also, you know, so that there's a kind of camera angle in this direction. There is potentially a camera angle in this direction. Potentially get rid of the guitar, camera angle in this direction, maybe with the windows in the background, that kind of stuff. And also when we do the podcast, we're gonna get a table. So it can be like, you know, I can sit over here or the guest can sit over here, and then we move across, and then the other person sits over there. So we have 3 angles for the podcast. And it would be sick if we can just have everything set up with maybe ceiling mounted lights and microphones and all that jazz, kind of like what Peter McKinnon and MKBHD do, and these people like Linus Tech Tips, these people with actual YouTube studios, and to reduce the friction of filming as much as possible. So that's kind of like what's going on next. Number 1, we're potentially trying to work with an interior designer, figure out what to do with the space. Secondly, we've just launched our 4th cohort of the Part-Time YouTuber Academy. And that's been good. I don't know how many sales we're on right now, but I think we sold 300 spaces within like the first day or 2, something like that. That's pretty sick. So just a few places left. Sign up if you want. So that's fun. That's launching on the 1st of November. Officially, that's when it's starting, and that'll be interesting. I'm gonna be actually in Pakistan for about 3 weeks. So we've been trying to do a lot to figure out how do we get the internet to be sorted and really make the setup as pro as it can possibly be. So pretty excited to do our Part-Time YouTuber Academy cohort 4, which will kind of mark the 1-year anniversary. And it was actually almost exactly a year ago, I think it was October the 19th, 2020, where Angus and I sat down and we were like, all right, let's plan out this YouTube course. And we got a bunch of like sticky notes and started drafting things out. And that then turned into this product, the Part-Time YouTuber Academy, which has now crossed over $2 million in revenue in the last 12 months, which is pretty mental. Because of that, it meant that we could afford like the studio space and afford to expand the team and hire people just for the YouTuber Academy. But it's also very scary because now a huge chunk of the revenue of the business is dependent on the Part-Time YouTuber Academy doing well. And that's like a really, really scary place to be, because if it doesn't do well, you know, it's done really well so far, but you can't, in this industry, it's very hard to sort of predict growth. And it may just be that it starts to plateau or starts to decline. And that feels scary because it's like now we're so reliant on it as a stream of income that we need to diversify into other things. So some of the stuff we're working on is some new courses, and basically just trying our best to make the free content on the YouTube channel and podcast and stuff really, really good. And then made the paid content, like the courses, really, really good. And the idea is that the courses fund the free content. And I often think that if I had unlimited money, if I didn't need to worry about money at all in the business, we wouldn't bother making courses. We would just do everything for free. But while we do still have to worry about money a little bit, I think it's nice because the courses appeal to people who can afford them, and we give scholarships to people who can't. And that funds all of the rest of the free content. So that's kind of what's happening with our YouTuber Academy. I guess kind of what's going on next, number 3, is that book writing is now underway. And this is a big part of like my calendar these days is so chock-a-block with random crap. When I say crap, it's sort of like meetings and stuff, and especially doing the podcast now. Like, it's really fun spending 2-3 hours interviewing someone, but then that's like sort of 4 hours out of my day. And now that I'm in the process of writing my book, you can sign up to the mailing list, link in the video description. It's like, you know, all of these little things eats into writing time. And so I've started telling myself, you know, I'm gonna wake up at 7 o'clock every single day and have 3 hours in the morning to write. And I actually woke up at 7 o'clock this morning and spent about half an hour writing. But then I had this eye appointment, and you know, this random stuff seems to always get in the way, despite me thinking, oh, how hard can it be to just have 3-4 hours of writing time in the day? I think it's been interesting because as the team has expanded and as I've spent more and more of my time doing the business side, I've been able to spend less time doing the content side. So what we're trying to do moving forward is trying to get like Angus and the rest of the team to handle the business side of running the business so that I can focus on what I think I do best, which is kind of hopefully coming up with decent content and hopefully writing this book, fingers crossed, which should come out in about 2 years, if everything goes according to plan. So that's another major update. And I guess finally, one of the things we're really trying to do over the next few months is getting our house in order. Now, what I mean by that is like, famously, back in the day, I don't know what year it was, there was one year just before Amazon hit like 1 billion in revenue or something like that. And Jeff Bezos said to his team, okay, this next 12 months, we need to spend getting our house in order. The objective is not to grow. The objective is not to like do anything fancy and launch new products and stuff. The objective is to get our house in order and make sure all of our processes are good, all of our systems are good, everyone knows what they're doing, we've got clarity, we've got good organizational structure. And they spent a whole year doing that. And now that we've sort of expanded so fast to a team of sort of around about just under 20 people, I think we definitely need a few months to get our house in order. One of the challenges, which we'll talk about, is like, you know, it would be nice if we didn't have to make YouTube videos during this time. But one of the challenges with being a YouTuber and sort of in a way being a slave to the algorithm is that this feeling of being on a hamster wheel of continuing to churn out content and feeling like, oh, if I take a break from posting on YouTube, then algorithm will think I'm bad or whatever, and people will stop watching. And if people stop watching, that has a knock-on effect on the rest of the business. And because now we're a team of 20 people, it's like we need the videos to do well. We need the YouTube channel to be successful to sustain this team of 20 people. So it's like a weird kind of, the more you grow, the more you have to grow to keep up with the demands of growth. This weird kind of thing that I wouldn't have considered back in the day, in the early days of starting the YouTube channel when it was just me for 2 years doing all the filming, all the editing, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, we're gonna spend the next few months getting our house in order. Let's now talk about, I think I made a list of 15 different challenges that me and the business are going through, and I'll just kind of spiel about some of those as we move around the space. So I guess challenge number one is kind of medium to long-term planning. You know, I think back in the day it was very easy to be like, oh, this YouTube thing is a side hustle and I'm just gonna make video after video. And my goal for the channel was just to make 1 or 2 videos a week. And I didn't really think of it beyond that. But now that we have a team and now we're growing and stuff, we need to start thinking in terms of like medium-term planning, long-term planning. And that's something that's a bit of a challenge because it's like, what even is kind of planning in this sort of industry? Things change so much, but at the same time, we do need to have a destination to be vaguely pointing towards. So people know what they're doing, people have kind of clarity on what their job involves, what it might look like in a few years' time. And I think I'm the sort of person where, in a way, I kind of feel I'm kind of happy making stuff up as we go along and launching a product because I feel like it and doing a video because I feel like it. But I'm starting to think more about putting some sort of vague semblance of like planning and structure in place, mostly so that like the team know what we're working towards, because otherwise it's apparently, you know, if you have a job, it's kind of hard to do it well if you don't know what the job is kind of aiming towards and what you're doing there. So the question is like, you know, what is the point of this business? What's the point of this YouTube channel? What's the point of the content? What might this look like 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 1 year from now? Who knows? The way I'm kind of thinking about it is, you know, the content I care about making is content that it sounds really cliche, but like that helps people live their best life by creating kind of inspiring and educational content. And that's the stuff I'm interested in. I'm interested in what makes a fulfilled and happy and meaningful life. And what I'm hoping is that as I explore more of that kind of stuff, that we can then make videos that talks about that sort of stuff and maybe shares it with the audience, shares it with you guys. Not in a sense of like, I figured out the answer to the meaning of life and I'm telling you, more in the sense of, hey, this is a question I'm trying to figure out and here are the things that have helped me along the way. So I think that's the direction that we want the content to go in. Hopefully the podcast will help with that side of things because we can then interview experts who are experts on relationships and happiness and longevity and health and fitness and stuff, so that it's not just about me trying to pretend to be an expert on all the things, but actually we're showcasing the expertise of other people as well. And then I guess sort of challenge number 2 almost is really you know, this question that we're all trying to answer, which is the question of what do I actually want from my life? And it's something that I don't really think about very often. When you're on a ladder, it's like, you know, when I was working as a doctor, it's like, it's a very clear kind of ladder of progression. And you don't often stop to think, what do I actually want to do with my life? You just sort of go for the next thing. Since taking a break from medicine and starting focusing on this business thing, the equivalent ladder I found myself on is, oh, I guess we'll just aim for more views and more subscribers and more revenue and more courses and just more and more and more. And I just haven't really stopped to think like, what do I actually want to do? You know, now that I've got the freedom broadly to design my life the way I want, within reason. It's a nice problem to have, but it also is a bit of a challenge because when you have so many options, it's hard to know which one to go for. And it's hard to even know what all the options are. Like I think back when I was working in medicine and it was like a confined career path, you're like, okay, I need to pick what specialty I want, but I've still got a choice of 20 specialties to pick from. Whereas now it's like, I don't really know if I still want to be a doctor forever. I don't know if I want to do this YouTube thing forever. Like, what the hell do I want to do? Like, I don't know. It's like there's a whole world of options. It's not like a kind of, you can choose from these 20 different defined options. So if anyone has any tips on that, do let me know in the comments, like anything you found helpful in terms of thinking about medium to long-term direction of your own life. One thing I found helpful is, you know, this Odyssey plan exercise that I've talked about a few times, asking this question of what does my life look like 5 years from now down this current path? And then putting that aside, what does my life look like 5 years from now if I took a completely different path? And putting that aside. And then asking ourselves, what does my life look like 5 years from now if money and status and what other people think were no object? And so I last did that exercise, I think probably a year ago, and I need to repeat that because that did help me at the time get clarity on what I actually want from my life. That's a bit of a challenge, trying to figure this out while also pumping out the content and running a business and all that stuff. And kind of related to that, one thing I've been trying to ask myself is, like, what is the infinite game that I want to play? There's a book, Finite and Infinite Games, where the guy basically leads with, you know, there are some games in life that are finite games that have an ending, and there are other games in life that are infinite games. And I think a finite game is something like, I want to get into med school. It's like, it's a finite game. Or I want to graduate med school. Or I want to get a first in my exams. Or I don't know, I want to start this business. In a way, these are all finite games. They have like an end goal. Whereas I want to try and figure out like, what is the game? What is the infinite game I want to play? What is the thing that I would want to do, that I would be happy to do kind of forever? Like, what does that look like? If I won the lottery, if I had, I don't know, 10 million in the bank or whatever, and I didn't, theoretically, if I didn't care about money at all, what is the thing that I would spend my time doing? And when I think of that, I often do land on, I probably would still continue to make YouTube videos, because the thing I care about is like reading, writing, like learning new things, and teaching. Teaching is ultimately, I think, one of my main passions in life. And so if I can teach at scale by making videos about stuff and maybe do some teaching in real life, maybe medical school teaching, maybe not, maybe like teaching entrepreneurship or teaching how to be a creator, that feels like it would be pretty fun. And I would do that even if I was not getting paid for it, if I didn't need the money. I probably wouldn't continue to make courses, because I think courses is teaching, but I kind of don't like the fact that we charge for them, because, we have to sustain the business. But if we didn't have to, I wouldn't charge people for education. So that's what I'm thinking about in terms of the infinite game. I'm also trying to think about like, there's an exercise that one of my friends turned me onto, the ideal ordinary week exercise. Like, what does your ideal ordinary week look like? Ordinary week in that, like, you're not on holiday, but ideal isn't like, if you could design your life however you wanted, what would it be? I'm trying to think, I've been thinking about this, like, okay, well, I'd want to play sports probably twice a week. I'd want to go to the gym probably twice a week. I'd want to kind of have a board games night at my place where I cook, maybe once a week. I'd want to play more badminton and squash and like table tennis and tennis. And I'd want to maybe go on holiday once a month with friends. And I'd want to have lots of time each day for deep work, whether it's reading a book or doing some writing. And I think, well, why don't I just do that? Like, what is actually stopping me from making that my schedule? And the answer is always like, oh, I don't know. I don't know why this is in my schedule. Like, I actually can do what I want, but I think, it's a useful thing to do to ask ourselves, like, what does my ideal ordinary week look like? And why is it that my current calendar does not reflect that? So just a little bit of a sort of challenge there, thinking about in terms of what is the infinite game I want to play, and what is the sort of calendar that I would be happy to have forever? And obviously my preferences are going to change over time, but I think it is worth thinking about that question. I want to make sure I'm actually enjoying the journey rather than just being fixated on a destination. Another challenge, which is, so we're sort of kind of bouncing about all over the place, is thinking about organizational design. Like, what does our organization structure look like? What are the different roles of the different team members? Now that we've got freaking 20 people on the team, what are they all doing? What are their like job descriptions, accountabilities? What are the, should we have metrics? What are the goals that they're working towards? What does exceptional performance in their role look like? I'm not much of a numbers guy. I don't really like metrics and goals and stuff, but apparently when you run a business, people, depending on who they are, do like having some level of clarity about what the job is and what they're working towards. So basically, I'm trying to figure out like organizational design. So what does it look like? One way of thinking of it is sort of, there's a visionary and an integrator, and sort of visionary is me and integrator is Angus. And then sort of within the business, we've got like sales and marketing, we've got operations, we've got sort of production. It's all somewhat semantic, because like, what do you call these things? And then there's sort of legal / HR / finance. And we've got these as like different boxes within the team. And then within sales and marketing, we've got sort of our website, we've got social media, and we've got sort of general marketing for our courses and all that kind of stuff. Within operations, we have like, for example, the YouTube channel, which has a producer. We have the podcast, which has a producer. We've got our part-time YouTuber Academy, which has its own sort of strategy person. It's got an ops manager, and it's got like 2 ops associates. Within production, we've got like pre-production, which is sort of our 5 writers. We've got production, which is our videographer that we have not yet hired. We have post-production, which is like our kind of 2 editors times 2, and a sort of freelance artist times 1. The struggle is in thinking, is this the best way to structure the organization? And the whole thing about structuring an organization does matter, because, let's say you're one of the operations associates. Let's say you're Tommy or Allison and you've just been hired into the team. You kind of want to know who your direct manager is, who you're reporting to, what the overall goals for the team are. And given that an individual person can manage around about 6 people, max, people say, we need, like, given that we have 20 people, we need to have some level of middle management. And that sounds like a very like corporate-y type thing, like, middle management. But it actually is important, because, if we've decided that I'm the content guy, the chief content officer, as it were, and I want to spend the bulk of my time writing and doing video stuff, that means I can't be spending a large amount of time managing people. People say that it takes about a quarter of a day every week if for each person that you manage. So if you're managing 4 people, you're spending 1 day a week on managing 4 people. If you're managing 8 people, you're spending 2 days a week managing 8 people if you're a really good manager. You know, within management, you want to have weekly one-on-one meetings with every one of your team members, holding them to account, making sure they're working on the things that they're working on and giving them support, helping them grow and develop as people and as like employees and all that jazz. So it's a lot of work doing this management thing, which I really did not appreciate when I first started bringing people onto the team. But the challenge with this structure is like, well, is this really the structure that we need? There are different ways of structuring a business. This is a sort of waterfall-y kind of approach. There's another sort of more agile way of structuring a business where you have teams and you have like, you whip up a squad of maybe like 3 or 4 people, and that forms a team for a particular project. And then it depends on what sort of project management system you use, whether you use the sprint method or these other ones. And this is all stuff that's all very new to me. I'm just sort of making this stuff up as I go along, as I read books. A few books that have been really helpful, you know, Traction by Gino, someone, The Great CEO Within, recently I read, Making of a Manager, The 1 Minute Manager, How to Be a Great Boss, The 4 Obsessions of an Extraordinary Executive. There's all these books that talk about this sort of stuff that I would have completely dismissed a few years ago. Like, what the hell is all this BS corporate mumbo jumbo? Who cares about like how you structure an organization? Like, it's all just semantics, isn't it, at the end of the day? But it's actually not. Like, it's really important when you get to a certain size to have clear kind of flows of accountability. Like, you know, who is ultimately accountable for, I don't know, our sales numbers for our YouTuber Academy, or our student satisfaction metrics for our YouTuber Academy. And ultimately, I'm the one who's accountable for absolutely everything. But the point of hiring people is you want to hand off some of that accountability and responsibility to them, so that instead of just me being up at night wondering, oh my God, are the students in our YouTuber Academy happy? Are the videos doing well? There are other people who have that as part of their jobs that, hey, your job is to, you know, for example, Elizabeth is sort of chief strategy officer or whatever you want to call it for our YouTuber Academy, and her job is to make sure the students have an amazing time. And so it's really nice being able to offload that responsibility to her and trusting that that will be her job for however many days a week that she's working for us. Equally, now that we've hired a YouTube producer, basically it's their job to keep track of all the content schedules and what content's coming out in the main channel, the second channel, the third channel that we're going to launch, the podcast channels. Man, it's sort of just figuring out and keeping track of all those things. It's actually quite a lot of work once you get to a certain scale. And so it'll be nice to be able to offload that to them. But this is all feels kind of tricky because I don't really know what I'm doing. And most people in the team also don't really know what they're doing when it comes to leadership and management, because we've got broadly young people. Like, I think probably the average age of our team members is about 26, 27, which is my age. In fact, probably slightly younger than that, possibly is the average age. And, you know, as someone in their early to mid-20s, you just don't really have experience with management and leadership and stuff, at least not to the degree where you're managing a team of 20 people effectively. So it's been fun learning in this stuff and being at that sort of steep bit of the learning curve where like every new bit of learning leads to a significant increase in like expertise. And I find that anytime I read one of these books, I always message Angus on Slack being like, oh my God, Angus, I've just read The 4 Obsessions of an Extraordinary Executive. It's really, really, really good. And then he reads the book as well, and then we learn from it, and then we kind of like grow together, and it's just kind of nice. But it's still a bit of a challenge because it's like, well, what is all this stuff? Why can't people just like, I don't know, this is your job, we just go and do it. But that's like not a thing. That's not a fair way to treat team members. They need to know who they report to and like what the structures look like and all that kind of jazz. So that has been what our org design struggles have looked like. Moving back into the communal area, which is kind of nice. Do I have my card with me? It's over here. I guess another thing that I think about a lot in terms of content is just trying to make sure that our content is like good and trying to define what good actually means. Because we could define good in terms of like the metrics, in terms of views, in terms of likes, in terms of comments. But the danger with that is then you start chasing the metrics. And I think, being honest, like for the past few weeks, like we put out 1 or 2 videos or 2 or 3 videos where if I'm being honest, the objective of those videos was to chase the views rather than because I thought the video itself was actually valuable and was actually going to help people. I feel bad that was the direction my thinking was going. And it's interesting, like Veritasium did a great video on the unreasonable effectiveness of clickbait. Oh, the audio here is quite nice. Yeah, the unreasonable effectiveness of clickbait and how when you put so much effort into making a YouTube video, you want to find a title that intrigues people enough that they click on it and they get value from it, but not so intriguing that it borders into clickbait territory. And I think, now that we've ramped up the pressure on this YouTube channel having to do well, I made the mistake of going too much into clickbait territory in a couple of recent videos, to the point that I actually deleted one of the videos because when I thought to myself, is this actually good content that I feel proud of, that feels authentic? The answer was no. I was like, all right, cool, let's just delete the video. Let's avoid doing that sort of content now. And I guess this sort of that coming back to, is the content good? One part of it is how does it do on the metrics? But another big part of it is, do I feel proud? Do I feel happy with this video? Does it feel authentic? Do I feel it would add value to at least one person? While thinking about the metrics slightly, I'm trying to move more towards creating content that I find is authentic and could be valuable to at least one person. And I was speaking to Becky and Chris and also Charlie from Charisma on Command on a live stream last weekend. And they both said something like something similar. They both talked about how when they make a video, they ask themselves, is this a video I'm proud of? And if it is, then it goes live. And yeah, try and give it a decent title and a thumbnail, but then don't think about it. And if it's a video I'm not proud of, then it's okay, why am I uploading this video? What's the point? In the past, I was holding myself to I have to put out 2 videos every week and one of them needs to be a sponsored video. And therefore, if I ran out of ideas one day or if a video just wasn't ready on time, I would end up putting together something that I wasn't proud of. I end up going live and it was like, oh, well, there's a sponsor deadline and therefore we have to put this video out. But what I've realized now is that actually, it doesn't matter if there's a sponsor deadline. You know, if Brilliant are sponsoring a video, they're not this one, I don't think. But if Brilliant are sponsoring a video, you know, I've been working with them for like 2 years now. They're great. I can just message them and be like, hey guys, hey Calvin, sorry, video's gonna be a bit delayed. And they're like, yeah, cool, you know. Creator mental health comes first before anything else. Obviously, don't put out a video you're not proud of. I don't need to put out a video just for the sake of the fact that it's sponsored, or the fact that I'm holding myself to this arbitrary twice a week upload schedule. I'm kind of using this video as a way of thinking out loud. I guess thinking out loud, the bar for a video going out on the main channel now is going to be, do I think this is actually a good video that will add value to people in some way? And can we pick an appropriate title and thumbnail that reflects that in a fair way, and trying not to go into clickbait territory while at the same time towing that line, because, you know, it's the game you got to play. Hit the player, don't hit the game. Other way around, hit the game, don't hit the player. So that'll be the plan. And actually, so, you know, we were meant to publish a video 4 days ago, didn't go out because I thought there's a way of making this video better. So I think moving forward, we're not going to hold ourselves to a rigid publishing schedule. It still would be nice to be able to bang out 2 videos a week, but if not, it's not the end of the world, who cares? I think our focus is now on quality rather than quantity of uploads. Whereas certainly if you're starting a YouTube channel back in the day, if you're in the early days of starting a YouTube channel, focusing on quantity actually does help, because the more videos you make, the better you get at making videos. But I think in our case, once you've gotten to a certain point, where I've been doing this for nearly 4.5 years now, 4 years and a bit, you know, the quality of the videos is the sort of knowing how to make a video is no longer the concern. I know how to use a camera, we know how to edit, we know how to do background music. Like, it's all fairly standard stuff. The thing now is like, is this actually a good video? So that's kind of another challenge that I've been thinking about a lot. The other thing as well is experimenting with different platforms. That's been a bit of a challenge, because especially with like the advent of TikTok and how, you know, some people are like, oh, TikTok is taking over. Oh, this place is very echoey. Oh well. People are like, TikTok is taking over the world. TikTok is just 1 billion users. And we're thinking, you know, should we be on TikTok? You know, is YouTube dying? That kind of stuff. And I don't know, like, we've been trying to repurpose some of the content for YouTube Shorts and for Instagram and for TikTok and things like that. But the thing that I'm used to doing is kind of very in-depth, educational, long-form YouTube videos where I can just ramble and talk about something that I'm quite familiar with. And that sort of content really doesn't lend itself to like TikTok and YouTube Shorts and IGTV and stuff, because those aren't really long-form platforms. And so the question kind of becomes, should we bother experimenting with these? What does our strategy on TikTok look like? What does our strategy on YouTube Shorts look like? And we've got a few ideas, but it always feels like, you know, every day there's some new kind of young person blowing up on TikTok or blowing up on Instagram, or even YouTube through YouTube Shorts. Back in the day when I was just starting out as a YouTuber, I would look at these established YouTubers and think, oh my God, that's incredible that they've done this for so long. I really aspire to be like them. But now, you know, now we're at the point where like this channel has become the thing that other people aspire to. And we're no longer that new kid on the block. We are in fact the incumbent, you know, the one that other people are trying to disrupt in kind of the startup or business world. And it doesn't quite work like that in content, in that it's not a zero-sum game. It's not the case that someone who watches Matt D'Avella is not also going to watch me because they watch Matt D'Avella. Like, that's not really how it works. Usually the rising tide lifts all the boats. At least that's how I see it. And so I don't think of other YouTubers as being competitors, but more like collaborators / colleagues / whatever. But even so, it's still that challenge of, you know, should we be on TikTok? Should we be pushing harder on these other social platforms that I don't really care that much about at the end of the day, because I don't really vibe with them as much as I vibe with long form YouTube content. And I think it all comes back to, if you're a solo operator building a lifestyle kind of business, you can kind of do what you want. But when you go into sort of building a actual business mode and hiring a team and now dealing with 20 people, you start having to ask questions like, should we be on TikTok? Even though I don't really care about TikTok, but is me not caring about TikTok hurting the business and therefore hurting the longevity of what we can do just because I don't understand TikTok myself? Yeah, that's another challenge. The other, you know, we're doing a lot of challenges. The other challenge that's happening right now is a challenge that I've been thinking about basically since I started the YouTube channel, which is, what is this balance between having a niche versus not having a niche? Like, what is my niche of content? You know, is it productivity? But like, that's a bit, you know, I don't really care that much about productivity. Productivity is just using your time well. Yes, productivity hacks and stuff, but there's only so much you can talk about productivity. Because it's studying for exams. You know, back in the day when I was studying a lot for exams, I cared a lot about how to study effectively for exams. Now that I don't really have exams anymore, I care a lot less about studying for exams. But if I kind of niched myself down to the studying genre, it's like, as I grow, what does the content become? Who knows? You know, these days, this whole thing about living your best life, I think kind of the 4 pillars of that are health, wealth, love, and happiness. And that's all stuff that I care about. But that's very broad. That covers all aspects of life. Should I be a wealth channel focusing on entrepreneurship, personal finance, and productivity? Should we be a health channel focusing on nutrition and fitness, or even just fitness? Should we be a tech channel focusing on just tech reviews? Should we be a, I don't know, talking about happiness channel that just talks about like gratitude and journaling and mindfulness and stuff? Like, I want to talk about all those things, but it doesn't really have a clear niche. I think it's probably a balance between the business and the art. Maybe that's not the right way of looking at it. Like, most YouTube growth coaches would say, if you want to blow up on YouTube, you need to niche down as much as possible. You need to find your niche, you need to target that niche, you need to like control that niche. But it's just more fun doing kind of a wide variety of content that's kind of focused around the stuff I care about rather than being confined to a particular niche. But again, it's this question of like, you know, I prefer to do a variety of content, but inevitably it's the productivity stuff that does better and the finance stuff that does way better than anything else that I do. If I talk about gratitude or happiness or impact or meaning or effective altruism or donating to charity, you know, those videos do really badly. No one seems to care about those as much as they care about 10 productivity hacks or, you know, iPhone 10 review kind of vibes. But at the same time, that's more the content that is also the content I want to create. And so there's this sort of balance between creating the stuff that I want to create versus creating the stuff that is objectively by the numbers better for the business. And I don't know what that balance is. I'm leaning towards, you know what, screw what the numbers say. Like, I would love to have an attitude of screw what the numbers say. I'm just going to make the content that I think is useful and that I think is valuable, and the numbers will take care of themselves. I think Matt D'Avella has a phrase, which is that be so good that you can ignore the algorithm. I think that's a really good way of doing it. I don't think I'm anywhere near as good as Matt is at making the videos, but I think probably leaning more towards, you know, like a video like this one. This is probably pretty long at this point. Don't really know what the title is going to be. Not sure how well this video is going to do. But I think this is an interesting video to make, and a bunch of people have asked me, hey, can you do a little bit more behind the scenesy stuff? What are you thinking about? What's going on? And it doesn't have a clear value add. It's not like a clear, here are 10 productivity hacks to make you more productive. It's a bit more of a ramble. But I hope this will be an interesting video. And so I'd put this out on the main channel, even though it might not do well. So I do kind of want to move more in that direction, think like not worrying so much about the numbers and actually thinking more about what do I want to make and what do I think will be authentic and potentially valuable for at least one person. And I guess 2 more things that I want to talk about. Number 1 is medicine. I'm still not entirely decided about whether I want to pursue medicine in the long term. I had a really great chat with Lewis Howes on his podcast, School of Greatness, a few weeks ago, where we talked a lot about this, and he really challenged my thinking on this, because before my vibe was always, hey, I'll do medicine part-time because it's fun, maybe train in emergency medicine, and then I'll do the YouTube thing on the side. And he really challenged me on this. He was like, why do you want to do this? Like, do you really enjoy it? Are you really passionate about it? And I was like, honestly, not really. Like, I'm passionate about teaching. Teaching is the thing that I care about. And I really enjoy medicine if, for example, I'm working and I've got medical students with me, because then I can teach as I'm doing the job. But I didn't particularly enjoy the job as when it was just me kind of dealing with the patients. His point, which was very reasonable, was like, you know, if teaching is ultimately the thing you care about, why are you sort of half-assing medicine for 1 day a week or 2 days a week when you could be spending that time doing teaching instead? I was like, damn, that's a really good point. The other thing I was concerned about was I had a real like fear on 2 fronts. Number 1, the fear of what if this entire business comes crashing down and things don't work out anymore, et cetera, et cetera. If that happens, then, well, at least I can just be a doctor as a backup option. And again, what Lewis challenged me on, he was like, okay, how much money are you going to make as a doctor? I was like, 40K a year. He was like, you could probably find a way of making 40K a year through the skills that you've now got through doing the YouTube stuff and the business stuff. And I guess before that, I hadn't really quite appreciated that I have like developed skills while doing this. Skills in, I don't know, all the stuff around videos and all the stuff around running a business and things. And if I needed to, if I lost absolutely everything and got canceled for whatever reason, and if the YouTube channel disappeared overnight, I'd probably still find a way of making money to support myself and my family without being a doctor, and probably make more money without being a doctor. So then the question becomes that, okay, well, if you can make more money doing something else, do you enjoy doing the medicine thing? Is it meaningful or impactful or fulfilling enough to warrant doing? And honestly, my current feeling on that is probably not. Like I said, the thing that I personally find fulfilling is teaching rather than practicing medicine, which is not the case for all my colleagues. A lot of my colleagues freaking love being doctors, and that's great. But that wasn't really the case for me. So I don't know. Still, it feels like, you know, partly it's a sunk cost, 6 years of med school, 2 years of practicing as a foundation year doctor. That's 8 years of my life that I've devoted to medicine. And I don't regret any of it. And if I had my time, I would do the same thing. But it just feels like, should I be pursuing medicine, even though I don't really want to? But I think that's interesting, because when we find ourselves, you know, someone said to me once that, you know, lots of shoulds lead to a shouldy life. And if I think I should do medicine rather than I want to do medicine, then that's probably not a great way of living life. So that's one challenge. Like still kind of thinking about that, but leaning towards just leaving medicine completely. The other reason that's scary is that this whole fear of like, I built my brand off the back of being a doctor. Like, hey, I'm a doctor from Cambridge and blah, 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 blah. And I do this productivity stuff on the side. And that made the YouTube channel kind of interesting. Whereas now it's like, well, what do I do in life? I make YouTube videos for a living. I'm writing a book. I'm like managing a team. I don't know. I just feel that's not quite as legit as, oh, I'm a doctor saving lives on the reg. And on the side, I'm doing the YouTube thing. So I had this fear of like, if I choose not to be a doctor because it's ultimately not what I'm passionate about, will I be hampering the business? Will the YouTube channel die because people don't care about what I have to say anymore if I'm not practicing as a doctor? And then, I've spoken to a few people about this, and Lewis in particular, he was like, look, if you were giving health advice, then I'd accept that. But people don't follow you because you're giving them advice on how to, mend a broken bone. They follow you because you're giving hopefully decent kind of advice on how to be more productive or how to be a better student or, how to live your best life. And he felt that like no one really cares about whether you're going to a hospital, talking to patients for one day in the week, or if you're not doing that. Like no one actually cares. And maybe it's mostly in my head rather than in actually the audience's mind. So those were my two fears broadly: the fear of what if I lose everything, and B, what if the brand dies based on the fact that I'm not a doctor anymore. We'll see what happens. Currently, like I said, leaning towards not doing medicine at all, because ultimately the thing that I'm passionate about is teaching. And I guess the final challenge that I wanted to talk about is this thing of making time for myself and trying to enjoy the journey as much as possible, because it's all well and good wanting to trying to chase more subscribers and more views and more downloads on the podcast and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, I think the destination is broadly meaningless unless we're enjoying the journey as well. And I think for me, when I am just so focused on growing the business, and even though it's fun, and I don't make time for myself, like to go to the gym or to, just hang out with friends and stuff. If I don't make time for that, then I just feel a lot less whole. It feels like I'm enjoying the journey a lot less. One thing I'm trying to figure out is the balance. Basically, the more hours I spend on the business, the more the business grows, probably. Because there's a pretty direct correlation between if I spend an hour writing a YouTube video and putting out that YouTube video, that has benefits for all of the things in the business. But, if I spend an hour going to the gym instead or hanging out with friends, that doesn't have that clear kind of monetary return. But I'm trying to be more okay with that. Like, that's totally fine. And trying to be okay with this idea that the business doesn't need to grow at an exponential rate. As long as, I was thinking, we had a session with a business coach the other day, which is really helpful. But he was like, what's your like 10-year target? Like, what do you care about in 10 years time? He was encouraging us to put like a number on it. Like, I know with School of Greatness, they say that probably their 10-year target is we want to reach 100 million people every month, something like that. That's like a really cool target to have. It's an interesting number. But when I think about what I want from this business, from the channel and stuff, X number of years from now, I don't think about it in terms of numbers. I think generally the thing I care about is I want to have a profitable business, i.e. one that makes a little bit of money, profitable business that helps people while having fun. And honestly, I think if we can do that, profitable business that helps people while having fun, that is like all I really want. I don't really care about hitting certain revenue targets or growth metrics or that kind of stuff. And so with that in mind, I'm trying to be more okay with recognizing that actually, given that that's the goal is not 10 million or 100 million. Given the goal is just profitable, having fun, helping people, I actually should be okay with making more time for myself and going on holiday and not taking the laptop along with me, or thinking that I have to be churning out a video every single week or twice a week. Because maybe that quantity would help with the business growing more and more and more, but it's not really compatible with, hey, all I care about is profitable business that helps people while having fun. So I don't know, we'll see. I guess that's the end of the video. We've talked a little bit about kind of a life update, what's going on in the company, in the team, in my life, and what the challenges are. If anyone has any advice, I'd love to hear it. Please leave a comment down below. If you know something about business or about life, or you just anything struck a chord with you, I would love to hear from you in the comments. I will be reading all the comments for this video and trying to reply to as many as I can while I'm on the toilet, as usual. So if you have advice on any of this stuff, genuinely would love to hear it. This is also a ridiculously long video, so if you've gotten to the end of it, I would love for you to leave a clover emoji. That's our little thing for these like stupidly long videos. A clover emoji, because it will be interesting to see how many people actually watch this through to the end. But if you have, thank you so much. Really apologize for taking up so much of your time, but hopefully you've gotten a modicum of value out of it. There'll be a playlist here with, like more rambles like this, if you do care to go down the rabbit hole of rambles. But otherwise, hope you have a great day. Do something better with your time, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.